Okay, I'm not going to talk about Fishmans. I know you want me to, and I can already see the angry comments from here, but just stick around until the end of the video and I will explain myself. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Okayest Computer YouTube channel. My name is Patrick, and today we're going to be talking about my 5 favorite live albums. I've always found the concept of the live album to be fascinating. It's a medium that allows you to capture the magic of a concert performance and take it home with you. I often find that listening to a live record allows you to feel much closer to an artist than with a studio album. You're hearing them at their most natural, and their most vulnerable, and most oftentimes at their best. For these reasons, I decided I want my first full video on the channel to be about 5 essential live recordings, and why I think they capture the beauty, versatility, and fun of the live album. Before we get started, a few things to note. 1, be sure to like and subscribe if you feel so inclined. 2, some of these albums have had reissues, with bonus tracks, encores, and clips from other shows. And while these bonus tracks are great, I'm only going to be talking about the original release of each album. With that being said, here is live album number 1. Deep Purple's 1972 live record, Made in Japan, was recorded during the band's first Japanese tour. This tour began shortly after the band recorded their 6th studio album, Machine Head. This, of course, was the album that gave us classic rock staples like Highway Star, Space Truckin', and all of these songs appear on the Made in Japan setlist alongside songs from Fireball and Deep Purple in Rock. The show opens with a brief organ solo from John Lord that eventually turns into an electrifying rendition of Highway Star. Everything comes together on this song perfectly. Ian Gillan's vocals throughout are simply spellbinding, effortlessly transitioning between the smooth crooning in the verses and terrific screeches in the chorus. And instrumentally, it's just as exhilarating. The incomparable drum and bass duo of Roger Glover and Ian Pace lay the groundwork for Ritchie Blackmore and John Lord to go completely mad with their respective solos. This song was a perfect way to open the show, and the greatness only gets greater with Child in Time. Child in Time is my personal favorite Deep Purple song, and the Japan performance is nothing short of perfection. The band reels you in with quiet organ chords and Gillan singing very quietly and calmly over a very relaxed instrumental. Then there's a sudden explosion, and Gillan is just belting these unbelievable high notes. The man's insane vocal range is on full effect in this song, and it is stunning. The middle section is devoted to a lightning-fast jam session that leads into one of the best guitar solos on the record. Ritchie devotes a good chunk of the song's runtime to furiously scaling and bending his notes, just shredding like there's no tomorrow. Epic seems like an understatement regarding this performance. Another highlight is the Mule, which is expanded to nearly 10 minutes in this live rendition. 6 of those 10 minutes are occupied by a monstrous drum solo. I feel like I'm left completely speechless every time I hear it. It feels so lively and furious, but it's not like it's complete nonsense. There's definitely an established rhythm here. That balance of crazy speed and the constant rhythm keeping everything together makes for a truly astounding solo. Made in Japan is often considered to be the band's finest live recording, which makes it very surprising when you find out that the band had very mixed feelings about it. Pace and Lord both loved how the record turned out, but Gillan was very critical of his performance. I, for one, was shocked to hear that he was unsatisfied with how his vocals turned out, since I've always found them to be phenomenal. The album was a critical success, and it's not hard to see why, given the popularity of Machine Head and Smoke on the Water. I'm so glad that people are still talking about Made in Japan nowadays, because oftentimes the reputation of Deep Purple overshadows the music itself. This album proves that the band still sounds as fresh and lively and enjoyable as they did all those years ago. The Long Goodbye was recorded at Madison Square Garden, and it was billed as LCD's final show. There would eventually be a reunion and a comeback album with American Dream, but for many years, this was the last the world heard of the band. What a way to go out it was. Despite the daunting 3-hour runtime, this album never drags or loses my interest once. The way that James Murphy guides the band through the 28-song setlist is so seamless and effortless that it almost flows like a regular studio album. The sound of LCD has always perplexed and fascinated me. They were so unique and individual that the only band they've been compared to is Talking Heads, another band that was stylistically ambiguous and highly influential. That 80s post-punk influence, as well as an expansive knowledge of electronic and garage music from James Murphy's time as a DJ in the 90s, led to a discography that wasn't very prolific, but was always amazing. The effortless blend of post-punk, funk, disco, pop, and alternative rock leads to some of the most vibrant and fun music I've ever heard. The opener, Dance Yourself Clean, is a track that you really have to hear to believe. It was also the introduction to their record This Is Happening, and with both the studio and live versions, there is a palpable tension here that is so powerful every time I hear it. Most of the intro is led by a very simple, quiet drum loop and a two-note bass line. As James enters with the vocals, it's still very controlled and very quiet. I remember the first time I heard it, I was intrigued, but I was also quite confused because it didn't seem loud and explosive enough to be a show-stopping opener. After several verses, there's a synth lead that comes in, there are vocal harmonies that progressively get louder and louder and louder. It's this crazy, suspenseful build-up, and then the beat kicks in, the whole band is playing, the crowd goes wild. It is just immaculate. Dance Yourself Clean is an absolutely gorgeous song, and it's a sign that you're in for an amazing live record. The first 6 songs are just non-stop fun. You've got the sing-along single Drunk Girls, a bit of wonderful electro-pop with I Can Change, 2 funky and infectious disco-influenced tracks, Time to Get Away and Get Innocuous, and one of the band's first songs with Daftpunk Is Playing at My House. The fan favorite All My Friends makes an appearance in what's probably the song's greatest performance ever. It's genuinely one of the most perfect songs I've ever heard, and I've included a link in the description to hear and watch this excerpt from the performance. It is just so good. The band takes a big detour to play 4533, an album-length song they recorded in collaboration with Nike. It's a massive suite split into multiple different sections that's meant to be listened to while exercising. It's a really strange song, but it's a lot of fun. The back half of the setlist is packed with some killer deep cuts, including tracks from the band's debut album, like Tribulations, Movement, and Yeah, as well as a great rendition of the band's debut single, Losing My Edge. And then there's the big finale. It begins with an extended monologue from James Murphy that is just heartbreaking to listen to. You can tell that he cared so deeply about this band, and he was just pouring his heart and soul into this final show. The whole thing is backed by the Twin Peaks theme, which is peculiar, but it's a very nice little detail. The show ends with New York, I love you, but you're bringing me down. Hearing the band put every last ounce of love and life and enthusiasm into this final song is about as bittersweet as it gets, simultaneously so beautiful and so devastating. There's not much more to say about this album. They're making the most of the time they have left, and I love every second of it.
Hi, me from the future coming in to say I totally forgot to record a separate audio track for this part, so the audio that you're hearing is coming straight from my camera. So sorry for the weird change in audio quality, but that will go back to normal at the end of the Swans segment. Okay, back to past me.
Oh, I'm excited to talk about this one. If you know me, you know I am a massive Swans fan. This is a band that has never disappointed me and always found a way to blow me away with every album and every song. This live album is no exception. It is loud, it is chaotic, it is terrifying, and it is everything I want in a Swans album, amplified even more in the live setting. For those of you who don't know Swans, they're typically classified as post-rock, which makes sense when they're categorized alongside bands like Mono, Godspeed You Black Emperor, and Slint. But they've always been about more than the 30-minute epics and expansive ambient tracks that you might find on some of their more recent albums. Actually, this earlier era of Swans in the 1980s was much darker and heavier, and more catered towards noise rock and the underground movement of no wave that was very prominent in the... This live album was recorded during the band's Greed Holy Money tour, a tour the band embarked on to support 3 releases they made in 1986, 2 studio albums, Greed and Holy Money, and the EP A Screw. The setlist was 8 songs from these releases, and although all of them are immensely enjoyable to a certain degree, there are 2 particular songs on this album that stood out to me. The first being Fool. Fool was released on Greed before it was re-recorded and put on Holy Money as Fool number 2. In their earlier days, the band had a habit of redoing songs and putting them on different albums. This live rendition of Fool has only 2 components, piano and vocals. Albums like Filth and Cop were built upon massive layers of percussion and loud distorted guitars. So having a song where all of that is stripped away and we're left with only piano as an audible instrument is not something that the band usually did at the time. This bare, stripped-back instrumental allows Michael Gira's vocals to really shine as he moans and growls his way through this really unsettling song. He repeats this list of ominous phrases that are so self-deprecating and dejected. I'll lie to myself. I'll believe in a lie. I'll cut off my right hand and stand in your shadow. "Let me go, let me go." These harshly delivered lyrics, combined with the haunting clatter of the piano, make for a really unsettling experience. In a way, this song kind of foreshadows the slow and sad material we would get on albums like Children of God, and it's fascinating to listen to. Coward has since become one of the most notable early Swans tracks, and it's one of the only songs from their earlier work that the band still plays live. And that's with good reason, since the slow, thumping drums, tuneless riffs, and distant, horrifying yelps fit perfectly alongside songs from The Seer or My Father Will Guide Me Up a Rope to the Sky. There have been 3 distinct recordings of Coward. The first was the studio version from Holy Money, the second was the public castration recording I'm talking about today, and the third was released much later on the current live album Not Here, Not Now. I really love all 3 variations on this recording, but the public castration variant is easily my favorite.
Hi, future me again. This is the part where the audio goes back to normal.
This is a setlist packed with brutal and morbid material, but I think Coward might be the heaviest moment on the album. The drums are significantly slower here than the studio version, providing layers upon layers of excruciatingly slow rhythms. The guitars are strummed so loudly and violently that they sound like the miserable groans of a dying machine. Michael Gira is definitely at his lowest during this song. Like with Fool, the lyrics are repetitions of hate-fueled phrases. He's just constantly yelling at the audience. Worthless, useless, stick a knife in me. The emotions here are at an all-time high, even when Gira says so little. There's a moment around 6 minutes in where it sounds like he's let out all of his aggression and he's just moaning, sighing, almost like he's about to start crying. This is one of the most emotional and vulnerable Swan songs ever made, and it's really intense to listen to. So bravo to Swans for recording one of the angriest and wildest concerts I've ever heard. This record manages to capture the terrifying ambiance of a Swans concert with stunning results. Anyone interested in going through Swans' discography is in for a real treat with this album. It is morbid, it is horrifying, but it is just irresistible. This 1974 live album was recorded over the course of 3 nights at the Roxy Theater in Hollywood, California, with 2 songs being added from a show in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania. There was originally going to be a film released alongside the album, but it was put off for decades. Joe Travers addressed the postponement of the movie saying this: "It's sitting in the vault, waiting for a budget to do it properly. I have no idea what Dweezil and Gale want to do. It's great stuff, but the process of just getting to that point is going to cost a lot of money and take a lot of time." There were bits and pieces of the film to be found on Zappa's website or as bonus material for certain DVD releases, but the full Roxy film never saw the light of day until 2015. The Zappa family had finally compiled enough footage to release Roxy the movie. The finished product is astounding, and I've included a link in the description to purchase the film. Anyways, back to the original album. The album contains 10 distinct songs, with extra bits of dialogue labeled on the vinyl releases as preambles. While some may shy away from this record because of how talkative the band is, I find that Zappa's comedic monologues and the interactions between Zappa and the band allow the music to feel so much more lively and human. Hearing the bizarre backstory behind Penguin in Bondage makes the song's lyrics a lot funnier. Zappa's narration in between solos of the bebop tango gives the accompanying band a lot more charm and personality. This is also the case on the song Dummy Up, which plays out like a surreal conversation between Zappa, guitarist Jeff Simmons, and saxophonist Napoleon Brock. The laid-back, effortless way in which Zappa and the band present themselves in these songs gives the whole concert a very relaxed and comfortable atmosphere, even when songs like Dummy Up and Don't You Ever Wash That Thing get very weird very quickly. Any of the 10 songs could be considered highlights, since over the course of an hour, Zappa is consistently entertaining and every song is awesome in its own way. Another interesting thing about this is 9 of the 10 songs on the original release had never been released on a studio album. More Trouble Every Day was a revised take on a song from the Mother's debut Freak Out, but outside of that, this was the first time a lot of people were hearing these songs. This makes it all the more exciting for a first-time listener, since you're hearing songs that you wouldn't normally hear in Zappa's discography. And honestly, I could imagine every one of these songs fitting perfectly in the tracklist of a traditional album. The aforementioned opener, Penguin in Bondage, has the kind of funky absurdity you would find on an album like Shake Your Booty. Village of the Sun has a doo-wop influence that was very prominent on the Mother's debut. An early version of Cheapness appeared as a B-side to Montana, so you can tell it would be perfect for overnight sensation. That blending of styles and sounds from all throughout Zappa's discography adds a lot of thrill and variety to Roxy's setlist. But the Zappa fans watching this know I saved the best for last when talking about this album. The centerpiece and the finest moment on Roxy and Elsewhere is the song Echidna's Arf of You. This could possibly be one of Zappa's greatest songs ever. Despite being one of the shortest songs on the album and being primarily instrumental, it's so intensely groovy and excellently performed. It proves that Zappa was not only a hilarious songwriter, but also a masterful composer. With the shifting time signatures, super sudden transitions between instrument solos, and the constant unusual chord changes, you may lose track of what's happening. And that's fine, since this is a very complex and disorienting piece of music. But listen really closely and try to understand what's happening, and you'll realize this was really carefully calculated. The harmonies are beautifully layered, the time signature changes are jarring but flawlessly performed, and the fact that the band does everything perfectly in sync is mind-blowing. Echidna's Arf, alongside Black Napkins and Watermelon and Easter Hay, has become one of Zappa's signature songs, and with good reason. This track, alongside the notorious Black Page, is a technical marvel of a song, solidifying Zappa's status as a very unusual but undeniably virtuosic rock guitarist. So yeah, Roxy and Elsewhere is solid front to back. It's half comedy show, half glorious musical mayhem. If you're deep into music theory, it's a masterclass in highly complex rock compositions, and if you're a casual listener, it's just a lot of fun. I highly recommend this album to all of you, and be sure to check out the movie too, it makes it even better. The fifth and final album for today is Daft Punk's Alive 2007. If you're an electronic fan, you already love this album, and if you're not, you will be after hearing it. Daft Punk is a duo the world knows and loves. Thomas and Guy Manuel are pretty much legendary at this point. Throughout the past 27 years, Daft Punk gained the ability to cause seismic shifts in the music industry with everything they released. Each of their 4 studio albums is amazing in its own way, and even the critically panned Human After All features some of the band's most celebrated singles. The 2000s were a really good time for Daft Punk. They were critically acclaimed, well, for the most part. They charted constantly, they were frequent award nominees, their first 2 albums quickly went platinum, and Human After All at least got gold. These guys had everything going their way by the time 2007 came around. So what did they decide to do? They went on tour and recorded Alive. Alive is a massive mashup of 27 songs lasting 74 minutes, excluding the encore bonus track. 2 of these songs aren't actually Daft Punk songs, with samples from Busta Rhymes' Touch It and Gabrielle's Forget About the World appearing alongside the duo's originals. The most interesting thing about Alive is how they managed to make every single song sound totally different from the original, as well as making all the tracks blend together perfectly. They somehow managed to take these songs we know and love and turn them into brand new songs that are as good as the originals, if not slightly better. The first sign that we're about to hear something amazing comes in the opening seconds. 2 dueling vocoder voices chant Robot and Human, progressively getting faster and faster before launching into a crazy mashup of robot rock and Oh Yeah. Choosing to open the show with a single that was still very new at the time was a bold choice, and balancing that out with a beloved track from Homework creates a really interesting balance between the Daft Punk that we already knew and the Daft Punk we were experiencing at that very moment. The next few songs are a wonderful blur of Daft Punk classics, starting with the unlikely combo of Busta Rhymes' Touch It and Technologic. This seems like a good time to bring up the awesome transitions between every song. As we move into Technologic, there are still elements of robot rock and Oh Yeah to be found here and there, and the fact that these songs take their sweet time to exit the mix adds so much smoothness to the changes between these drastically different songs. Another case of an unlikely pair that works really well is the record's most notable moment, combining Around the World with Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger. Here we have 2 of the biggest Daft Punk songs ever made, a dynamic duo of electronic titans, somehow combined into a new, cohesive, and brilliant song. The seamless blend of the contrasting vocal lines is surprising but highly entertaining, and the 2 singers trade places over an instrumental that was original and created only for this song. Honestly, I'm at a loss for words trying to describe how magnificent this song is. This is what won them their first Grammy Award, and they absolutely deserved it. My favorite moment on the album by far is the immense 10-minute remix of The Prime Time of Your Life. There are also appearances from the criminally underrated track The Brainwasher and homework highlights Rollin' and Scratchin' and Alive. The first 3 minutes are dominated by the primetime vocals, until they eventually contort into sharp blasts of static. It leads to an uncharacteristically chaotic instrumental once the Brainwasher samples are mixed in. There's a lot of distortion, wild layers of percussion loops, super fast synth leads, heavily manipulated vocal samples. It's a lot crazier than what you would normally expect from a Daft Punk song. But once again, it's packed with mind-blowing transitional moments, super catchy melodies, and elements of Daft Punk songs we know and love, so it doesn't feel too out of the ordinary. Alive is a perfect summary of Daft Punk's discography and what makes them so essential to music. Instead of just relying on the success of previous records and choosing to play every song verbatim, Daft Punk decided to take already brilliant pieces of music and find ways to make them even better. The frequent rotation of songs and inclusion of a lot of new instrumentals assures a diverse and fun electronic record unlike anything we've ever heard before. If you are even remotely interested in electronic music, this is a landmark achievement of the genre. Those of you who've been paying attention have probably noticed I just went through 5 albums and this wasn't one of them. I really love 98-12-28. Fishmans are one of my favorite bands. So why didn't I talk about this iconic record? The reason is, I will be devoting an entire video to 98-12-28. This album exists entirely in a world of its own. You know it, I know it, a few paragraphs won't do this thing justice. So, the next video I'll be making will be all about Fishmans, this concert, long season, and answering the question, is this really the greatest live record ever made? I'll be telling you exactly what I think in my next video. Okay, that's the end of the video. I understand there are a lot of live records I could have talked about, and I apologize if I missed your favorites. Remember, this is all just my personal beliefs. Opinions change, opinions disagree, and that is absolutely fine. Thank you so much for watching. As always, remember to like and subscribe if you feel so inclined. I hope you all have a very nice day.